Hello, it's Eric here, and so today, as you can hear from the background noises, that I'm sitting at the water's edge, the harbor's edge, and the waves are absolutely crashing into the cliffs, and it's almost midnight now, and but the traffic is still pretty heavy in the harbor, yeah, and so it's Friday night, so it's probably everybody's getting ready for the weekend celebrations, yeah. But so today, I want to go back to wearing my philosophy hat, and because I want to discuss a philosophical problem called the Molineux problem, and I want to be able to draw some relationship, draw some connection between the Molineux problem and some of the run-of-the-mill problems that we see in finance, And so first of all, let's have a look at the definition for Molineux problem in philosophy, yeah. And so Molineux is a philosopher from France, around about the mid 19th century, and so he comes up with a very famous problem, and the problem is like this. So let's say, for example, you have a blind man, yeah, and the man has been blind from birth, and so he has never been able to see anything. And so he gets to know his environment by his other senses, like by touch and by smell and by sound, yeah. Like, for example, he can tell the difference between a cube and a sphere just by touching them, yeah. And then, so now the problem is, let's say, for example, one day an eye doctor is able to restore sight, to this blind man. So now all of a sudden he can see again, And then, so the question is, if you ask this man to look at a cube and a sphere, would he be able to tell the difference between a cube and a sphere just by looking at them? Because remember, he has never looked at a cube and a sphere before. Before before the doctor restored his eyesight. And so this is a very famous problem in philosophy known as Molineux problem. And then so over the years. Some philosophers say yes, and this man should be able to tell a sphere from a cube just by looking at them, even though he has never seen a cube and a sphere before, yeah. And then, but some philosophers say no, yeah, he can't do that. And then, so the philosophers who say yes believe that our sense modalities can communicate with each other. So that basically is a roundabout way of saying that, the information that you get from one sense can be transferred to your other senses, Like, for example, if you can tell the difference between a cube and a sphere just by touching them, then this information should be able to transfer to your eyesight, or should be able to transfer to your smell or to your sound, So therefore, even though you have never seen a cube and sphere before, but you know the difference between them just by touching them, and now you're not touching them, you're just looking at them, you should still be able to see the difference, tell the difference between a sphere and a cube, And so those are the views of the philosophers who say yes, Molineux problem is actually not a problem. But some philosophers say no, our sense modalities really cannot communicate with each other, That means, if you ask this man to look at a cube and a sphere, he will not be able to tell the difference between them, yeah, unless you ask him to touch them, which he has done before, yeah. But he has never seen a cube and a sphere before, yeah? So therefore he should not be able to tell the difference between them, yeah. So those are the views of the camp of philosophers who say no, yeah, and then that means that they believe that the Molineux problem is a real problem, And but it seems that the empirical evidence from medicine says that the Molineux problem really is a problem. That means our sense modalities really cannot communicate with each other, And but be that as it may, whether it's a problem or not a problem, I want to relate this Molineux problem to a very famous problem in finance, And in finance there are written rules and there are unwritten rules, and we know what rules are acceptable, what rules are unacceptable, And so without going too deep into the meaning of acceptability or unacceptability, so let's just say, for example, you are a trader, or investor, So you've been trading and investing all your life according to the written rules, and you know that the written rules are acceptable, yeah. So you follow those rules. But let's say, for example, one day you come across some unwritten rules, And then so you don't know whether whether you should follow these unwritten rules. Yeah, you don't know whether these unwritten rules are acceptable or not. And this has huge implication on your investment behavior, because if you believe that these unwritten rules are acceptable, then you go ahead and do it. But if these unwritten rules are actually unacceptable to the court of law, then you will be in trouble, because you think they're acceptable, so you go ahead and do it. But then it turns out that they're actually unacceptable by law. Yeah, so that means you will go to jail for doing this. So then the question is, let's say for example you know all the written rules, but can you tell whether an unwritten rule is acceptable or not? Yeah. Remember, you have never seen these unwritten rules before. So how do you know whether an unwritten rule is acceptable or not? Yeah. In some ways this is a very deep philosophical question. Yeah. And so let's look at some examples in the next video. Yeah. So I think that today I have given you enough material, enough philosophical material to chew on. Yeah. So in the next video we're going to discuss some examples of these very famous finance problems. Yeah. All right. I'll see you then. Bye.